My name is Frank Sullivan, and at 67, I thought I'd seen every curve life could throw at me. 43 years married to my beloved Catherine, who passed 8 months ago after a long battle with Alzheimer's. 2 kids. My son David, who lives in Seattle with his own family, and my daughter Lisa, my baby girl who married Marcus 3 years ago. After Catherine died, the house we'd shared for 30 years felt like a tomb. Every room echoed with her laughter. Every corner held memories I wasn't ready to face alone. When Lisa suggested I move in with her and Marcus temporarily, just until I figured out my next steps, it seemed like a lifeline. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone right now," Lisa had said, her eyes red-rimmed from her own grief. "Mom would want us to take care of each other." Marcus had nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, Frank. Family comes first. Stay as long as you need." If only I'd known what family comes first meant to him. The first month was everything I'd hoped for. I moved into their guest room in the beautiful colonial they'd bought in Riverside Heights, a house I'd helped them purchase with a substantial down payment gift 3 years earlier. At the time, I'd been so proud to help my daughter secure her dream home. I tried to be the perfect house guest. I cooked breakfast every morning, my famous blueberry pancakes that Lisa had loved since childhood. I maintained the yard, fixed the leaky faucet in the master bathroom, and even paid to have their driveway sealed and the fence repainted. "Dad, you don't have to do all this," Lisa would say, but I could see the relief in her eyes. Money was tight for them. Marcus worked in sales for a tech company, and his commissions had been inconsistent. "I want to contribute," I'd tell her. "Besides, it keeps me busy." What I didn't tell her was how much it helped with the grief. Having purpose, having people to care for, having Lisa's smile at breakfast. It made the pain of losing Catherine bearable. Marcus seemed genuinely grateful too at first. He'd clap me on the back when he came home to a perfectly maintained yard. He'd brag to his friends about his handy father-in-law, who was basically a live-in handyman. I should have paid attention to that phrasing. The first sign of trouble came 6 weeks into my stay. Marcus had invited some coworkers over to watch a football game, and I'd prepared a spread of appetizers, buffalo chicken dip, sliders, the works. I'd even bought a case of expensive beer I knew his friends preferred. As I was bringing out the food, I heard Marcus talking in the kitchen. "Yeah, Frank's been staying with us. Honestly, it's worked out great. Free food, free labor, and the old man even pays for stuff around here." His friend laughed. "Sounds like you hit the jackpot. Tell me about it." Lisa felt guilty about putting him in a nursing home, but this way we get all the benefits without any of the costs. I stood frozen in the doorway, the tray of food trembling in my hands. Free labor, benefits without costs, like I was hired help, not family. But it was the nursing home comment that really stung. Lisa had never mentioned a nursing home. We'd never even discussed it. After that, I started noticing things differently. The way Marcus would leave his dirty dishes on the counter, knowing I'd clean them. The way he'd interrupt me mid-sentence during dinner conversations. The way he'd make decisions about his house without consulting me, even when they affected my living situation. "I'm thinking of converting the guest room into a home office," he announced one evening over dinner. Lisa looked surprised. "But Dad's staying there." "Temporarily," Marcus emphasized. "And honestly, Frank, you'd probably be more comfortable in the basement anyway. More privacy, your own entrance." The basement, unfinished, with a concrete floor and a single bathroom that barely qualified as functional. "The guest room is fine," I said calmly. "For now," Marcus replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But we need to think long-term here." Lisa stayed quiet, pushing food around on her plate. My daughter, the little girl who used to climb into my lap and demand I read her stories, wouldn't even look at me. The breaking point came on a cold February evening. I'd spent the day fixing their heating system, a job that would have cost them at least $500 if they'd called a professional. My back was aching. My hands were stained with grease, but I was proud of the work. Marcus came home from a client dinner, clearly having had a few drinks, and found me washing the tools in the kitchen sink. "Still playing Mr. Fix-It, I see," he said. his voice carrying an edge I'd heard more frequently lately. The heating system was acting up. I got it working again. How much is this going to cost me? I looked at him, confused. Cost you? Nothing. I used some parts from the garage and… That's not what I meant. Marcus leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. I mean, how long is this going to go on, Frank? How long is what going to go on? This, you, living here like you're part of the family. The words hit like a physical blow. Lisa walked into the kitchen at that moment, and I looked to her for support, for defense, for anything. She said nothing. Marcus, I said carefully, Lisa is my daughter. That makes me part of this family. He laughed. Actually laughed. Does it? Because from where I stand, you're a guest who's overstayed his welcome. A guest who rearranges my house, cooks in my kitchen, and acts like he has a say in how things work around here. I'm trying to help. I didn't ask for your help. His voice was rising now. I didn't ask you to fix my heating system or paint my fence or cook breakfast every morning like you're running a bed and breakfast. Lisa finally spoke. Marcus, please. Please what, Lisa? Please pretend this is normal. Please act like having your father live with us forever was part of our marriage plan. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Lisa, do you want me to leave? The pause before she answered told me everything I needed to know. It's not that simple, Dad, she said quietly. We need our space back. We're trying to start a family, and having your grieving father around isn't part of that picture. I finished. Marcus stepped forward, emboldened by Lisa's tacit support. Look, Frank, you're welcome to stay. But if you do, you need to understand the rules. This is my house, my rules, my decisions. He pointed toward the back door. The garage has electricity and a space heater. There's even a bathroom out there from when the previous owner used it as a workshop. If you want to stay, that's where you belong. With the lawnmower and the Christmas decorations and the other things we keep but don't really need. The comparison was deliberate, cruel, designed to humiliate. I looked at Lisa one more time, hoping, praying. She would stand up for me, defend me, remind her husband that I was her father and deserved basic respect. Instead, she looked away. Fine, I said quietly. I'll move my things to the garage. Marcus smiled triumphantly. I knew you'd see reason. What he didn't know was that I was already planning his downfall. Moving my belongings to the garage was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. At 67, after 40 years of marriage, after raising 2 children, after building a successful construction business from nothing, I was being relegated to sleeping next to paint cans and garden tools. The space heater Marcus had mentioned was ancient and barely functional. The bathroom was little more than a utility closet with a toilet and a sink that dripped constantly. The concrete floor was so cold that even with rugs, the chill seeped through everything. But it was the symbolism that hurt most. I had become what Marcus said I was, something they kept around because they had to, not because they wanted to. That first night, lying on an air mattress surrounded by boxes of Christmas ornaments, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to accept this treatment. I was going to remind Marcus Sullivan exactly who he was dealing with. The next morning, I began going through my papers. Documents I'd brought with me when I moved in but hadn't really looked at in months. Financial records, legal documents, the remnants of a lifetime of responsibility. That's when I found it. The deed to 1247 Riverside Heights Drive. The house Marcus kept calling his house. The house where I was now sleeping in the garage like a vagrant. I stared at the paper for a long time, reading the names listed as owners. Frank Daniel Sullivan and Lisa Marie Sullivan Thompson, as joint tenants with right of survivorship. Not Marcus Thompson. Not even Lisa and Marcus Thompson. Lisa Sullivan Thompson. And me. See, when I'd given them the down payment 3 years ago, it hadn't been a gift, though I'd let them think it was. It had been an investment. 50% of the purchase price, to be exact. And my lawyer, being thorough as always, had insisted my name go on the deed to protect my investment. Lisa had signed the papers without reading them carefully, trusting her old dad to handle the boring legal stuff. Marcus had been so excited about getting the keys, he'd barely glanced at anything that didn't require his signature. But there it was, in black and white. I owned half the house. Marcus had just banished me to the garage of my own property. Over the next few days, I did my homework. I pulled out all the documentation from the house purchase, every receipt from the improvements I'd paid for over the years, every record of my contributions to their life. The numbers were staggering. $125,000 down payment, 50% of the purchase price. $15,000 for the new roof 2 years ago. $8,000 for the kitchen renovation last year. $12,000 for the fence, driveway, and landscaping. Countless smaller repairs and improvements. I'd invested over $160,000 in this house. I'd paid for nearly every major improvement. And now I was sleeping in the garage while Marcus played Lord of the Manor. But ownership was just the beginning. I started researching tenant rights, property law, eviction procedures. If Marcus wanted to play hardball with a 67-year-old widower, he was about to learn that this particular widower had built a construction business by understanding contracts, negotiations, and leverage. I called my lawyer, Jim Rodriguez, who'd handled my business affairs for 20 years. "Frank, how are you holding up? I heard about Catherine." "I'm so sorry." "Thank you, Jim. I'm calling about the house on Riverside Heights. The one you co-purchased with Lisa? What about it?" "I need to understand my rights as a co-owner." There was a pause. "Frank, what's going on?" I explained the situation, the move to the garage, Marcus's treatment, Lisa's silence. "Jesus, Frank. He banished you to the garage of your own house. Half my house, technically. Actually, more than half. With all the improvements you've funded, you've got a claim on about 60% of the property's current value." Jim was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do about this?" "I want to explore my options. All of them. Legal options can be nuclear, Frank. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" I thought about Marcus's smug face, about Lisa's silence, about sleeping on an air mattress in a garage while they enjoyed the house I'd paid for. I'm sure. While I planned my next move, I became the perfect garage tenant. I didn't complain about the cold, didn't ask for anything, didn't even eat their food anymore. I bought my own groceries and cooked on a hot plate I purchased. Marcus interpreted this as defeat. He became even more brazen, inviting friends over and giving them tours that included, with obvious amusement, the garage where Lisa's dad lives. "It's temporary," he'd tell them with a laugh, "until we can find him a nice senior community somewhere." A senior community. Like I was some feeble old man who needed to be warehoused. Lisa seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the arrangement, but not uncomfortable enough to do anything about it. She'd bring me leftovers sometimes, her eyes full of guilt, but she never addressed the fundamental injustice of the situation. "How are you doing, Dad?" she'd ask, looking around the garage like she was seeing it for the first time. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry about me. Maybe we could look at some apartments nearby? Something small and affordable. Something small and affordable. For the man who co-owned the house she was living in. Maybe, I'd say. We'll see." But I knew exactly what I was going to see. Jim worked fast. Within a week, he had prepared a comprehensive legal strategy that would give Marcus Thompson the education of a lifetime. First, Jim explained over coffee at his office. "We need to establish your rights as a co-owner. That means serving them with a formal notice of your ownership interest and your intention to exercise your rights." "What rights specifically?" "The right to occupy the entire property as a co-owner. The right to make decisions about the property. The right to demand an accounting of all income and expenses related to the property, including the value of your labor and financial contributions." Jim smiled grimly. "The right to sell your share of the property to a third party if you choose." "Sell my share?" "It's called a partition action. If co-owners can't agree on how to manage a property, any owner can force a sale and split the proceeds according to their ownership percentage." I thought about this. Marcus and Lisa would have to buy me out or sell the house and split the money with me. Either way, Their comfortable arrangement was about to become very uncomfortable. "There's more," Jim continued. "Since you've been living there for months and contributing to the household expenses, you may have additional rights as a tenant, even without a formal lease." "What kind of rights?" "The right to proper notice before any changes to your living situation. The right to habitable living conditions. The right not to be harassed or discriminated against by other occupants." Jim pulled out another document. "Making you sleep in the garage could constitute constructive eviction, forcing you out of your rightful living space through deliberately poor conditions." The plan was beautiful in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. The papers were served on a Thursday morning while Marcus was at work. A process server knocked on the door and handed them to Lisa, who signed for them with shaking hands. The documents were comprehensive. Notice of co-ownership interest, formally declaring my 60% ownership of the property. Demand for proper accommodations, requiring that I be given suitable living space within the main house. Accounting demand, requiring them to provide detailed records of all household expenses and my contributions. Notice of intent to exercise owner rights, giving me equal say in all property-related decisions. When Marcus came home and found Lisa sitting at the kitchen table with the papers spread in front of her, I heard the explosion from the garage. "What the hell is this?" Lisa's voice was quiet, shaky. "He owns part of the house, Marcus. Dad owns 60% of our house." "That's impossible. He gave us that money. It was a gift." "I don't think it was. Look at the deed." There was a long silence. Then, "Get him in here. Now." Lisa came to the garage, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, can you come inside? Marcus wants to talk." I took my time getting up, straightening my clothes, preparing for what I knew would be the most important conversation of this whole ordeal. Marcus was pacing the living room like a caged animal when I walked in. His face was red, his hands were shaking, and he looked like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. Which, in a way, it had. "Is this real?" He waved the papers at me. "Do you really own this house?" 60% of it, yes. "But you said, you told us it was a gift." "I never said it was a gift, Marcus. I said I wanted to help Lisa buy a house. And I did." Lisa was crying silently on the couch. "Dad, why didn't you tell us?" "Because it didn't matter as long as we were all family. As long as everyone was respectful and considerate." I looked directly at Marcus. But things change. Marcus slammed the papers down on the coffee table. "This is blackmail. This is property law. You can't just kick us out of our home." "Our home," I corrected. "And I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm demanding that the co-owner of this property be treated with the respect and consideration I deserve." "What does that mean?" I sat down in the chair I'd bought for the living room, my living room. "It means I'm moving back into the guest room. Tonight." "Like hell you are." "Marcus," I said calmly, "you seem to be confused about the power dynamic here. Let me clarify. I own this house. You live in this house. Those are not the same thing." Lisa looked up through her tears. "Dad, what do you want from us?" "I want what I've always wanted, sweetheart. To be treated like family. To be respected in my own home. To not be banished to the garage like an unwanted piece of furniture." Marcus was still pacing. "This is insane. You can't just... This changes everything." "Yes," I agreed. "It does. Here's how this is going to work," I continued, my voice steady and reasonable. "I'm moving back into the guest room tonight. I'll contribute to household expenses as I always have, and I'll help with maintenance and improvements as I see fit." "And if we don't agree?" Marcus challenged. I smiled. "Then my lawyer will file a petition action, and we'll sell the house. After legal fees and commissions, you'll walk away with maybe 30% of the proceeds. Enough for a down payment on a nice apartment somewhere." The blood drained from Marcus's face. "You wouldn't." "I'm 67 years old, Marcus. I've got maybe 15 good years left, and I'm not spending them sleeping in a garage because you've decided I'm not worthy of basic respect." Lisa was sobbing harder now. This is all my fault. I should have stood up for you. I should have said something when Marcus. Yes, I interrupted gently. You should have. But you didn't. And now we're here. I stood up. I'm going to get my things from the garage. When I come back, I expect my room to be ready. Marcus found his voice as I reached the door. What if we all start over? Pretend this never happened. I turned back to him. Marcus, 3 days ago you told me I belonged in the garage with the Christmas decorations and the lawnmower. That I was something you kept around because you had to, not because you wanted to. His face flushed with embarrassment. You made me sleep on an air mattress in an unheated garage. You mocked me to your friends. You made plans to put me in a senior community like I was some burden to be disposed of. I stepped closer. Did you really think there would be no consequences for that? That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time in weeks. The bed felt like heaven after the air mattress in the garage. But more than the physical comfort, it was the restoration of dignity that mattered. The house dynamic changed immediately. Marcus no longer made decisions unilaterally. When he wanted to change the cable package, he had to ask my opinion. When he planned to have friends over, he had to clear it with me first. This is my house too, became my standard response to any presumption of authority on his part. Lisa was devastated by the revelation of how much I'd contributed financially over the years. She'd assumed the down payment was maybe $20,000 or $30,000, not the $125,000 it had actually been. Dad, I had no idea you'd invested so much. No idea how much you'd been paying for everything. I didn't want you to worry about it. But it means we've been taking advantage of you for years. Yes, I said simply. You have. But Marcus was the one struggling most with the new reality. His entire identity as Lord of the Manor, as the successful provider, as the decision-maker of the household, had been shattered. This isn't how marriage is supposed to work, he complained to Lisa one evening, not realizing I could hear them from the kitchen. What isn't? Having to ask your father's permission for everything. Having to pretend he's an equal partner in our marriage. He's not a partner in our marriage, Marcus, but he is a partner in our house. It's humiliating, and there it was. The real issue. Not that I was inconvenient, not that I was in the way, but that my presence, my ownership, my authority was humiliating to his ego. Which gave me an idea for the final phase of my plan. A week after reestablishing myself in the guest room, I made another discovery that changed everything. Going through the financial documents Lisa had provided as part of the accounting demand, I found something interesting about their mortgage payments. They were behind. 3 months behind. The monthly payment was $2,800, and they owed $8,400 plus late fees and penalties. The bank had already sent 2 warning letters about foreclosure proceedings. Marcus had been struggling at work. His sales numbers were down, his commissions had dropped significantly, and they'd been living on credit cards for months. But here's the beautiful part. As a co-owner of the property, I had the right to bring the mortgage current to protect my investment. And once I did, I'd have a legal claim for reimbursement from the other owners. I called Jim immediately. They're behind on the mortgage? Frank, this changes everything. How so? If you bring the mortgage current, you can demand immediate reimbursement from Marcus and Lisa. If they can't pay, you can file a lien against their portion of the property. And if they still can't pay, you can force a sale to recover your money. Essentially, you'd be foreclosing on them. The irony was perfect. Marcus had treated me like a burden, like someone who contributed nothing. Now his financial irresponsibility was going to give me complete control over the house. I didn't tell them I knew about the mortgage situation. Instead, I waited for the right moment. It came the following Tuesday when Marcus received a certified letter from the bank. I watched him read it through the kitchen window, saw his face go pale, saw him crumple into a chair with his head in his hands. Lisa found him there 20 minutes later. What's wrong? They're starting foreclosure proceedings. We have 30 days to bring the mortgage current or they're taking the house. Lisa's scream brought me running from the living room, playing the concerned father-in-law perfectly. What's happened? The bank. Lisa was hyperventilating. They're going to foreclose. We're going to lose the house. I sat down slowly, processing this shocking information. How much do you owe? Marcus couldn't even look at me. About $9,000 with the penalties. $9,000? I made my voice sound appropriately shocked. How did it get so bad? My commissions have been down. We've been juggling bills, trying to keep everything current, but the mortgage is so high. I was quiet for a long moment, letting the weight of the situation settle. Well, I finally said, we can't let them foreclose. This is my home too now. Marcus looked up hopefully. What are you thinking? I'll pay it. I'll bring the mortgage current. The relief on their faces was immediate and profound. Dad, really? You'd do that for us? Of course, sweetheart. But the hope in Marcus's eyes dimmed. But we need to make some changes to how this household operates. What kind of changes? Marcus asked warily. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared with Jim's help. Since I'll be covering the mortgage and since I already own 60% of the property, I think it makes sense to formalize our living arrangement. I handed them each a copy of the document. This is a cohabitation agreement. It spells out everyone's rights and responsibilities. Lisa read through it quickly. It says you'll pay the mortgage going forward? That's right. All $2,800 a month. Marcus was reading more carefully. It says we pay you rent. A modest rent, yes. $800 a month for your use of the master bedroom and associated areas. Rent? To live in our own house. Marcus, I said patiently. It's not your house. It's our house. And if I'm paying the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, then yes, you pay rent. I pointed to another section. You're also responsible for all utilities, groceries, and general maintenance. I'll handle major repairs and improvements as I see fit. Marcus was getting agitated again. This is like being a tenant. You are a tenant, Marcus. You're tenants in my house. But Lisa is an owner too. Lisa is welcome to pay half the mortgage if she'd like to maintain her ownership rights. That would be $1,400 a month, plus half of taxes and insurance. Call it $1,800 total. Lisa's face went white. They couldn't afford $800 in rent, let alone $1,800 in ownership costs. Or, I continued, Lisa can sign over her ownership interest to me, and you can both live here as tenants under this agreement. Sign over her ownership? Marcus was incredulous. For consideration, of course. I'll forgive the $9,000 mortgage debt, plus I'll pay Lisa $50,000 for her ownership share. I let that sink in. $50,000. More money than they'd seen in years. The choice is yours, I said, standing up. But I need an answer by tomorrow. The bank wants their money, and I'm not paying it without a clear agreement about how this household operates going forward. That night, I could hear them arguing through the walls. Marcus's voice was angry, desperate. Lisa's was tired, defeated. We don't have a choice, Marcus. We can't afford the mortgage payments. We can't afford to lose the house. So we become his tenants? In the house we thought was ours. It was never really ours. Not if he paid for most of it. This is humiliating. More humiliating than foreclosure? More humiliating than having to move in with my brother in his one-bedroom apartment. There was a long pause. $50,000 would pay off our credit cards and give us a fresh start, Lisa said quietly. As tenants, as renters, in the house where I was supposed to be the man, the provider, the head of household. Marcus, you haven't been the provider for months. Dad has. Another long pause. I hate this. I hate all of this. I know. But what choice do we have? The next morning, they signed the agreement. Lisa transferred her ownership interest to me for $50,000. Marcus signed a year-long rental lease with an option to renew. I now owned 100% of 1247 Riverside Heights Drive. Marcus Thompson. The man who had banished me to the garage, who had called me a burden, who had mocked me to his friends, was now my tenant. The change in household dynamics was immediate and dramatic. I moved into the master bedroom, the largest, most comfortable room in the house. Marcus and Lisa took the smaller bedroom down the hall. It's only fair, I explained when Marcus protested. As the owner and the one paying the mortgage, I should have the master suite. Marcus had to ask permission for everything now. Wanted to paint the living room? Need to check with the landlord. Wanted to install a new light fixture? Landlord approval required. Wanted to have friends over for the weekend? Better clear it with Frank first. The rental agreement I'd crafted was thorough and legally binding. Rent due on the 1st of every month, with late fees for payments after the 5th. No modifications to the property without written permission. Quiet enjoyment hours from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. No guests staying more than 3 nights without approval. Landlord has right to inspect the property with 24-hour notice. This is ridiculous, Marcus complained after I denied his request to install a hot tub on the deck. You're treating us like strangers. I'm treating you like tenants, Marcus, because that's what you are. But the most beautiful part was watching him struggle with his friends and coworkers. The same people he'd bragged to about having me in the garage now had to hear him explain why he was paying rent to his father-in-law. It's temporary, he'd tell them, just until we save up enough to buy our own place. But we both knew the truth. At $800 a month rent plus utilities and expenses, they weren't saving anything. They were trapped. 2 months into our new arrangement, Marcus made a crucial mistake. He was hosting his monthly poker game, with my permission, of course, and one of his friends made a comment about the house. Nice place, Marcus. Must be doing well to afford something like this. Without thinking, Marcus replied, Yeah, well, actually Frank owns it now. We're just renting. The poker game got very quiet. Your father-in-law is your landlord? Marcus's face turned red. It's complicated, but I was standing in the kitchen, and I could hear everything. I decided to clarify things for his friends. Good evening, gentlemen, I said, walking into the dining room where they were playing. Hope everyone's having a good time. Mr. Sullivan. Good to see you, said Tom, one of Marcus's co-workers. Beautiful house you have here. Thank you. I'm quite proud of it. I glanced at Marcus, who was staring at his cards intently. Can I get anyone anything? More beer? Some of those sandwiches I made. You made sandwiches? Another friend asked. Oh yes, I like to take care of my tenants. Make sure they're comfortable. The word tenants hung in the air like a bomb. Tom looked confused. Tenants. Marcus and Lisa rent from me, I explained pleasantly. Have for a few months now. They're excellent tenants, very responsible. I could practically hear Marcus's pride crumbling. Anyway, don't let me interrupt your game. Just remember, quiet hours start at 9. I walked back to the kitchen, leaving Marcus to explain to his friends how he'd gone from homeowner to renter in his own house. The breaking point came 4 months into our rental arrangement. Marcus had been struggling with the humiliation, the loss of status, the constant reminder that he was living in Frank's house now. He'd been drinking more, arguing with Lisa more, making increasingly desperate plans to get out from under the old man's thumb. The fight started over something trivial. I'd asked him to keep the noise down during his morning workout routine because it was disturbing my sleep. This is bullshit, he exploded. I can't even exercise in my own house without permission. It's not your house, I reminded him calmly. Right? It's your house. Everything is your house, your rules, your decisions. Do you have any idea what this is doing to me? Do you care? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. He looked exhausted, defeated, desperate. Do I care what it's doing to you? I repeated his question. Marcus, do you remember what you said to me the night you banished me to the garage? His face flushed with shame. You said I belonged with the Christmas decorations and the lawnmower. Things you kept around because you had to, not because you wanted to. He couldn't meet my eyes. You made me feel like a burden, like an unwanted guest in my own home. You humiliated me in front of your friends, made jokes about putting me in a nursing home, and treated me like free labor. I stepped closer to him. So no, Marcus, I don't particularly care what this arrangement is doing to your ego. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. Lisa had been watching this exchange in silence, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she spoke. Dad, I know we hurt you. I know I should have stood up for you and I didn't. But this isn't helping anyone. I turned to my daughter, the little girl I'd raised, the woman I'd loved and supported her entire life. What would help, Lisa? What would make this better? I don't know, she whispered. But we can't keep living like this. Marcus is miserable, I'm miserable, and you're not the father I remember. Her words stung because they contained truth. The man who had orchestrated Marcus's downfall, who had systematically stripped away his dignity and authority. That wasn't the Frank Sullivan who had raised Lisa with kindness and patience. You're right, I said quietly. This isn't who I want to be. Marcus looked up, surprised. But I also can't go back to being the man you walked all over. The man you felt comfortable banishing to a garage. I sat down heavily in my chair, the chair I'd bought for this living room in the house I now owned outright. So where does that leave us? That evening, Marcus knocked on my bedroom door, the master bedroom that had once been his. Frank, can we talk? I opened the door to find him holding 2 beers and looking more humble than I'd ever seen him. I thought maybe we could, I don't know, talk like adults. I accepted the beer and followed him to the back porch, where we sat in the chairs I'd bought, looking out at the yard I'd maintained. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Marcus began, about consequences and choices. I waited. The thing is, I never meant for it to go as far as it did. The garage thing, I was feeling like I wasn't the man of my own house anymore. Because I was there? Because you were better at everything than I was, he said quietly. You could fix anything that broke. You cooked better than I did. You knew more about maintaining the house, managing finances, even making Lisa happy. I hadn't expected this level of honesty. I felt like I was becoming irrelevant in my own marriage. Like Lisa didn't need me anymore because she had you. Marcus took a long drink of his beer. So I tried to establish dominance the only way I knew how. By making you smaller. By banishing me to the garage. Yeah. He looked ashamed. By treating you like you were beneath me. When the truth was I was afraid I was beneath you. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of traffic. Marcus, I said finally. I built a construction business from nothing. I've been managing properties and people for 40 years. Of course, I know more about maintaining a house. He nodded. And I've been cooking for myself since Catherine got sick. Of course, I'm good at it. Another nod. But you know what I can't do? I can't sell technology solutions to businesses. I can't work with clients and close deals. I can't navigate office politics or build professional relationships. Marcus looked surprised. Everyone has different strengths, son. The problem wasn't that I was good at things. The problem was that you saw it as a competition instead of a collaboration. So what do we do now? He asked. I had been thinking about this question for weeks. That depends. Do you want to be a tenant for the rest of your life? Or do you want to be family again? The next morning, I called a family meeting. Lisa, Marcus, and I sat around the kitchen table with coffee and the weight of months of conflict between us. I have a proposal, I began. But first, I need to know something from both of you. I looked at Lisa. Do you want me to be part of your life, your family, going forward? Not as a burden or an obligation, but as your father. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Of course I do, Dad. I've missed you. The real you, not the landlord version or the garage version. I've missed my father. I turned to Marcus. And you? Do you want to find a way to make this work? Or would you prefer I help you find somewhere else to live? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I want to make it work, but I don't know how to get past everything that's happened. Fair enough. Here's what I'm thinking. I pulled out a document I'd had Jim prepare. This is a partnership agreement. Not a rental agreement. Not a landlord-tenant relationship. A partnership. They both looked confused. I'm proposing that the three of us become equal partners in this household. Equal decision-making power, equal responsibilities, equal investment in making this work. Lisa picked up the document. What does that mean practically? It means, Marcus, you go back to paying the mortgage, or at least half of it. I'll cover the other half. We split utilities, groceries, and maintenance costs 3 ways. Marcus looked skeptical. I can't afford $1,400 a month for the mortgage. You're right, but you can afford $700. And I can afford $700. And Lisa can contribute $400 from her part-time job, plus take responsibility for groceries and household management. I leaned forward. More importantly, it means we make decisions together. Want to paint the living room? We all discuss it and agree. Want to have friends over? Normal courtesy, not permission from a landlord. And the ownership of the house? Marcus asked. I keep ownership for now. But if you want to earn back equity, you can. Every month you pay into the mortgage builds your stake. In 5 years, if this partnership works, we can revisit the ownership structure. Lisa was reading through the agreement carefully. It says here that we all have to attend family counseling together. Non-negotiable, I said firmly. We've all hurt each other. We've all made mistakes. If we're going to live together as a family, we need to learn how to do it better. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I don't really believe in therapy. Marcus, I said, 3 months ago you believed I belonged in a garage. Maybe it's time to examine some of your beliefs. Our first family counseling session was awkward, tense, and necessary. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a family therapist with experience in multi-generational households, listened to our story with professional patience. So frank, she said. You felt disrespected and devalued in the home you had financially supported. That's right. And Marcus, you felt threatened and emasculated by Frank's presence and capabilities. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I guess. Yeah. And Lisa, you felt caught between 2 men you love, unable to defend either without hurting the other. Lisa nodded, crying again. Here's what I'm hearing, Dr. Martinez continued. 3 people who love each other but have never learned how to live together as adults. Frank, you're used to being the patriarch, the decision-maker, the provider. That's how you showed love, by solving problems and taking care of people. I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. Marcus, you're used to being the man of your own house, but you've never had to negotiate that role with another strong male figure. Instead of learning to share authority, you tried to eliminate the competition. Marcus was nodding slowly. And Lisa, you've been trying to keep peace instead of addressing problems. You've been managing everyone's emotions instead of advocating for what's right. Lisa looked like she'd been slapped. I thought I was trying to help. You were trying to survive, Dr. Martinez said gently. But survival mode isn't sustainable for a family. Over the following weeks, we learned to have the conversations we'd been avoiding. Marcus admitted that his treatment of me hadn't been about space or house rules. It had been about his own insecurity and fear of being replaced. I thought if I could make you smaller, I would feel bigger, he told me during one session. And how did that work out for you? Dr. Martinez asked. It made me into someone I hated, someone cruel and petty and small. I admitted that my response, the legal maneuvering, the power plays, the systematic humiliation, had been about punishment rather than resolution. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, I said. Powerless, unwanted, like a burden. And how did that feel for you? Terrible, I admitted. It felt terrible, because that's not who I want to be. Lisa had the hardest revelations. She had to confront the fact that her silence hadn't been neutrality. It had been complicity. When I didn't stand up for Dad, I was making a choice, she said, crying. I was choosing Marcus's comfort over Dad's dignity. Why? Dr. Martinez asked. Because I was scared. Scared that if I pushed back against Marcus, he would leave me. But I knew Dad would never leave me, no matter how badly I treated him. The insight was devastating and liberating at the same time. 3 months into our partnership arrangement, small changes began to accumulate into something that felt like progress. Marcus started contributing more than just money. He took over management of the household technology, setting up streaming services, managing the Wi-Fi network, handling all the electronic devices I struggled with. It was a way for him to contribute expertise without competing with my mechanical skills. "Hey Frank," he said one evening, "I set up that voice assistant you mentioned wanting. Want me to show you how to use it?" It was a small thing, but it was the first time he'd offered to teach me something instead of the other way around. Lisa began taking more responsibility for household management and decoration. She had an eye for making spaces beautiful and comfortable, and she started making the house feel more like a home we all shared rather than a place where we all happened to live. "What do you think about new curtains for the living room?" she asked during one of our weekly house meetings. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "Something lighter, more cheerful. The current ones are pretty dark." Marcus looked up from his phone. "What's the budget?" The fact that he asked about budget instead of just agreeing or disagreeing felt like progress. I started backing off from my need to control everything. When the kitchen faucet started dripping, instead of immediately fixing it myself, I mentioned it during our house meeting. "I can take a look at it," Marcus offered. My first instinct was to say I'd handle it. I was faster, more experienced, less likely to make it worse. But I caught myself. "That would be great. Let me know if you need any tools." Took him 3 tries and a trip to the hardware store, but he fixed it. And the pride on his face when it stopped dripping was worth the extra time and effort. Our first real test came when Marcus lost his job. His company was downsizing, and despite his recent improved performance, he was let go with 2 weeks severance. The old Marcus would have hidden this from me, probably would have tried to bluff his way through months of unemployment rather than admit he couldn't make his half of the mortgage payment. Instead, he told me the same day it happened. "Frank, I need to talk to you about something," he said when I got home from my weekly visit to Catherine's grave. We sat in the living room, and he explained the situation directly and honestly. "I know this puts you in a tough spot," he finished. "I can probably cover next month's payment with savings, but after that." The old Frank would have used this as an opportunity to reassert dominance, to remind Marcus of his financial dependency. Instead, I said, "What's your plan for finding something new?" "I've got some leads already. My network is pretty good, and I think I can have something within a month or 2. "Okay, here's what we'll do. I'll cover your half of the mortgage for 3 months. If you find something before then, great. If not, we'll reassess." Marcus looked stunned. "Just like that. Just like that. We're partners, Marcus. Partners support each other during difficult times." Lisa hugged both of us, and for the first time in almost a year, it felt like we were actually a family. Marcus found a new job in 6 weeks. A better job, with a company that valued his skills and offered real advancement opportunities. The first thing he did with his signing bonus was insist on paying me back for the mortgage payments I'd covered. "I don't need you to pay me back," I told him. "I know, but I want to. It's important to me." I understood. It wasn't about the money. It was about being able to contribute, to pull his weight, to be a partner rather than a dependent. ## Chapter 22. An unexpected visitor. 6 months into our partnership, David called from Seattle with devastating news. "Dad, Sarah and I are getting divorced." I sat down heavily. David and Sarah had been married 12 years with 2 kids. I thought they were solid. "What happened, son?" "We grew apart. Different goals, different priorities. We tried counseling, but we want different things from life." I heard the pain in his carefully rehearsed explanation. "How are the kids handling it?" "Emma understands something's wrong, but Jake's confused." My heart ached for my grandchildren. 8 and 5, too young for their world to fall apart. Sarah's got a job opportunity in Boston. We've agreed the kids should go with her, and I want to move back east too. Be closer to them. David was appending his entire life to stay near his children. "That's the right thing to do, son. I need time to get established. Find a job, find a place." He paused. "Would it be possible for me to stay with you temporarily?" I thought about our carefully balanced household dynamic. "Let me talk to Lisa and Marcus. This affects all of us now." I understand. And Dad? I heard about what happened with Marcus. I'm proud you stood up for yourself but also found a way to work things out. That takes character. This would be our first real test as a family. That evening, I brought up David's situation during our weekly house meeting. David needs a place to stay temporarily while he gets established on the East Coast. Lisa immediately brightened. Of course, David's always welcome. Marcus was more practical. Where would he stay? How long? A few months, maybe 6. I could move back to the guest room. No, Marcus said firmly. That's your room. You've earned it. His comment revealed how much our relationship had changed. 6 months ago, Marcus would have jumped at any chance to reclaim the master bedroom. We could finish the basement, Lisa suggested. Turn it into a proper apartment. Marcus nodded. I could handle the electrical work, maybe add a kitchenette. I'll do plumbing and construction, I added. And I'll coordinate permits and materials, Lisa said. Just like that, we had our first major family project. The basement renovation became more than construction. It tested everything we'd learned about collaboration. Marcus surprised me with his electrical skills, running smart home wiring throughout the space. Lisa managed the project expertly, keeping us on schedule and under budget. There were moments when old patterns threatened to emerge, but we caught ourselves. When I started rewiring an outlet Marcus had completed, he asked what was wrong with his work. Actually, nothing, I admitted. I was falling into old habits. If you see improvements, tell me. I want to learn. That conversation was a breakthrough. Marcus was secure enough to seek feedback, and I was mature enough to recognize when my help wasn't needed. When David arrived, the basement transformation was complete. A bright, comfortable apartment with bedroom, full bathroom, kitchenette, and sitting area. This is incredible, he marveled. You guys built all this together? We did, I said, proud not just of the construction but what it represented. David integrated seamlessly into our household. At 35, he bonded with Marcus over sports and technology while bringing perspective that surprised us all. Growing up, I thought Dad was this perfect father who never struggled, he told Marcus one evening. But watching you two work through problems, seeing Dad admit mistakes and ask for help, that's actually better than hero worship. Every other weekend, David's kids visited. Emma and Jake filled our house with joy, and I became the grandfather I'd always wanted to be, present and involved. One Saturday, while making pancakes, Emma asked, "Why did you and Uncle Marcus used to fight?" "Sometimes grown-ups have trouble learning to live together," I explained. "We had to learn to be better friends." "But you're friends now?" "We are." "Good. Fighting is dumb." A year later, Lisa and Marcus made an announcement during Sunday dinner. "We're pregnant," Lisa said, tears of joy streaming down her face. The table erupted in celebration. This baby would be born into a stable, loving household where adults had learned to work through problems together. "There's something else," Marcus said nervously, producing an envelope. "Frank, I want to buy back into the house." Inside was a check for $75,000 and a proposal for 30% ownership. "I want my child to grow up in their parents' house, not their grandfather's." I studied Marcus's proposal, fair, well-researched, and thoughtful. "I have a counter-proposal," I said. Marcus looked worried. "I'll accept your $75,000, but instead of 30%, I'll give you 40%. When the baby's born, I'll transfer another 10% to them as a college fund." "That leaves you with only 50%, Marcus protested. "Equal partners. The way it should have been from the beginning." I looked around at my family. "Besides, I have news too. I want to travel while I'm still healthy. Maybe winter in Florida. Visit David's kids more often." "You're moving out?" David asked. "Not permanently. But you don't need me here all the time anymore. You've proven you can work together." "You'll always have a home here," Marcus said firmly. 6 months later, Catherine Marie Thompson was born on a beautiful April morning, named for my late wife, arriving healthy and surrounded by love. Holding her in the hospital, I thought about our journey. 2 years ago, I'd been sleeping in a garage, feeling unwanted. Now I was part of a loving, functional family that had learned to weather storms together. I'm grateful for everything that happened, Lisa whispered. Even the bad parts. We never would have learned to really be family otherwise. She was right. The crisis had forced us to build a foundation based on respect rather than assumption. Looking at my granddaughter's perfect face, I knew that little Catherine would grow up in a house where love meant treating each other with dignity, especially when it's hard. Some lessons are too important to learn only once.